The Atlanta Braves made some deals yesterday, signing Enoli Paredes and trading for Nick Allen. Here's why those deals matter for 2025. Yes, welcome on in to Braves Today for Tuesday, November 12th, your source of news, notes, and updates on your Atlanta Braves. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby. Follow me on Twitter at Crosby Baseball. He's Christian Rauh, Christian S. Rauh, R-A-U-H on the Twitter machine. You can follow the show on Twitter, Braves_today. We have a Facebook page and Instagram as well. And you can find all of our written work, bravestoday.com, because this is both a newsletter and a podcast. Special shout out to our friends at Encase Cards for sponsoring today's show. You can get custom and personalized trading cards slabbed at encasecards.com. So, Christian, Alex Anthopoulos did some work yesterday, right? The Braves made a trade. The Braves also made a minor league signing. And normally these wouldn't necessarily be that important. But I want to talk about Enoli Paredes and Nick Allen and what I think AA is trying to do here with these moves. Do you have a preference? You want to go pitcher first? You want to go position player first?
Let's talk about the trade first. AA is the busiest guy in baseball, so let's talk about him making some moves.
Okay, so the Atlanta Braves make a trade with the not the Oakland Athletics, just the Athletics for Nick Allen.
How many times are we going to mess that up this
I'm going to do it so much, man. They trade minor league pitcher Jared Johnson for him, who was most recently in, I think it was high A, and is Rule 5 eligible this year. So literally, I'm going to go on a limb and say not a loss at all. But acquiring Nick Allen is really interesting to me. 26 years old, third round pick in 2017. He has 3 years of time in the major leagues, a total of 247 games. He's batted .209 with 9 home runs in those 247 games, 8 stolen bases. He's played second. He's played third. He's played predominantly shortstop. And I've seen a wide range of opinions, right? I've seen some people say that this deal literally doesn't matter at all. I've seen some people say this is the shortstop of the future, and AA was cooking on this. I think I'm going to be somewhere in the middle on this. I think I see what the Braves are trying to do when you look at who Nick Allen is as a player, and I don't think he's your starter at shortstop, but I do understand if he is, how it changes the dynamic of the offense. What are your, before I jump into all the details, what are your thoughts on the acquisition of Nick Allen?
I don't think it's a bad move by any means. And when you're talking about players like this that you've potentially never heard of, and AA goes out of his way to grab a guy like this, you probably should start paying attention and maybe go and looking at some of his highlights, because what we have seen in the past is he usually does cook, right? There's no doubt about that. But I don't know if I'm willing to say that he's the shortstop of the future or anything like that. Initially, my mind goes to, okay, he's probably the Zach Short of the future, something around that lines, which I'm okay with. But if he goes back to 2023 numbers, he looked pretty good in 2023, 837 OPS. He only had a 16% strikeout rate. Pretty good numbers for a guy that had 300 at bats and over 100 and something games when he was with then the Oakland Athletics. Okay, so I'll have to just put that then portion in front of it. Then I think we'll be okay, Lindsay. But when you're looking at his numbers in 2023, not bad. Batting average only 221, though. You're not going to get this huge influx of offensive performance from a shortstop. Might be better than Orlando Arcia, but not too much of an increase there. In my mind, you're not making a huge jump. That's why I can't say that he's like the shortstop of the future, if you will, Lindsay. But I think you can get some solidified numbers and could be a really solid bench piece for you sitting on that Braves bench.
Yeah. All right. So looking at some of the advanced stuff, 2022 at shortstop, and this wasn't a ton of time, 273 defensive attempts, 502 innings. He was +6 run value and 8 outs above average in 2022 at shortstop. He was +1 out above average in 2023. He was -1 this year. I think some of the reporting he was nicked up a little bit, but he's played short, he's played second, he's played third. I think the thing here with Nick Allen, and I put a lot of this on Twitter after this happened yesterday, so I think it's important to know here, is he is a different type of player than Atlanta has typically gone after. Okay. We've talked on here. Atlanta's whole thing is they like their dudes to hit strikes hard, right? They want to mash, they want to slug. Nick Allen does not do that. His power in AAA, because that's a larger sample size of most recent, right? AAA last year, he played 81 games in the Pacific Coast League, which is an offensively oriented league for the Las Vegas Aviators, who I actually have one of their hats. I should have put it on for the show today. It's a cool logo. But he batted .345 with a .928 OPS. And that's an offensive-oriented league, yes. But the way that he did it, his power, his 90th percentile exit velocity, which is one of the best ways to measure power, was 99.3 miles an hour in AAA. Now, the MLB average is 103. So he was well below MLB average on power. He's just not mashing the ball. But what he was disciplined with really good contact ability. Chase rate in AAA, under 20%. His walk rate, over 13%. So he draws his walks. He doesn't chase a lot, and he gets on base. His contact rates, to evaluate the hit tool here, 87.8% overall, which has really helped because you're not chasing a ton. But in the zone, 93% contact rate in the zone. He's not striking out a ton. He's not swinging and missing a lot. And on StatCast, you can even see his whiff rate in 23, where he got his biggest major league amount of time. None of his stuff he had enough at-bats to qualify, but the only real red bars he has is on whiff rate and strikeout rate. He makes contact. He doesn't strike out. He doesn't really chase a ton. In 24, he didn't hit for a ton of power, but he did do a good job of squaring up his pitches. Like, he made the most optimal contact that he could. With a new hitting coach in Tim Hires, who has been talking about it's your pitch selection, it's trying to minimize chase, it's trying to maximize opportunities in the zone. It feels like Nick Allen may potentially be a sign that the Braves are trying to diversify on offense a little bit from nothing but guys that mash for power, right? And if you can take some of these lesser hitters like Orlando Arcia and replace them with a guy like Nick Allen, who's at least going to put the ball into play, I feel like that's overall an improvement to your roster, even if at the end of the day, his batting average is the same or just barely above whatever Orlando Arcia did. The fact that he put the ball in play and made them get him out by making a defensive play versus just striking out, I think is an improvement. We all saw Game 5, Inning 5 of the World Series. The Dodgers put the ball in play and made the Yankees beat them, and the Yankees couldn't do it. And so if you can put the ball in play, I will take a guy who will put the ball in play weekly over a guy that will strike out 7 days a week and Sunday after church.
100%. And when you look at his MLB career so far, only 250 career games. So you can consider that still a small sample size. I would, but he's got 198 games at shortstop, but he's also got 46 at second. He does have 5 at third. So having that little bit of versatility could be a really nice little piece being off the as a role piece off the bench for the Braves. Here's my overreaction. You ready, Lindsay? Here's my overreaction for this. Does the addition of Nick Allen, and I'll go ahead and go back and say this is an overreaction. Does the addition of Nick Allen mean that Nacho Alvarez Jr. is now more expendable?
I would argue Nacho is a similar type of player to Nick Allen as far as a lower power, higher contact kind of guy. I think Nick Allen not having options means he's going to have to make the roster out of spring training. I think what this says is they don't think Nacho Alvarez is expendable. They just agree that he's not ready. And so because of that, you absolutely they have to find another option to have a major league backup because they think Nacho needs more time in the minors and he's not ready for everyday play time. So I would expect this to be a position battle in spring training. Nacho may win the shortstop job. Who knows? But if he doesn't, I would expect him to go to AAA and again play every day at shortstop to see if it can be the guy of the future because they don't necessarily think he's ready.
Yeah, I don't disagree whatsoever. I do think adding a guy like Nick Allen, it just in itself is going to be fun for spring training. It's exactly what the Braves need. They need a little bit more competition, especially at the shortstop position, because we know that is the position that needs to be improved in 2025.
Yeah. And then the other deal, they signed right-hand pitcher Enoli Paredes to a minor league deal with an invite to spring training. Team's not announced this yet. It was reported by media in Houston, where he used to play before he went to the Brewers and then the Cubs. But interesting profile here, right? Last year, 18 combined appearances between the Brewers and Cubs, 166 ERA, picked up a save, but he struck out only 6.6 batters per 9 innings. And so 21 and 2/3 innings, 16 strikeouts to 10 walks. But in the minors, in AAA with the Brewers, in 26 innings, he struck out 41 guys with 11 walks. Much better numbers. And so this one's really interesting to me. He doesn't have options. He has to make the roster out of spring training, or else you're probably going to lose him. But I went back into StatCast and I pulled his AAA numbers to see what he was doing there. And some of this is absolutely mind-blowing, okay? So four-seamer, he's mostly a four-seam slider guy. Four-seamer, 51% usage, right? Averages just under 95 miles an hour in AAA last year. Swinging strike rate of 18.9% and a ground ball rate of 66% on a four-seam fastball. That is absurd, okay? His slider, 44% usage, 85 miles an hour, swinging strike rate of 23.5%, ground ball rate of almost 50%. So in the minors, he got tons of punchies and tons of ground balls. In the majors, I don't quite know why everything went backwards a little bit as far as what he actually got for strikeouts. His whiffs were still pretty good. The average exit velocity he allowed was really good. His hard hit rate he allowed was really good. But I like this deal from the perspective of it's going to cost you almost nothing. And if you can figure out what the difference was between his AAA performance and his major league performance, when he in AAA, he pitched like a dude, 14.2 strikeouts per 9 innings. Come on. Just figure out how to convert that to the majors.
Yeah, that's a lot of strikeouts. And when you're talking about that huge ground ball rate, that sounds like that he has a pretty good idea of where his location is going to be for the most of his pitches, which is also a good thing as well. He's young too. Doesn't seem like he's old. What is he? 28 years old. So I mean, that's pretty good. 29. That's awesome. So if it works out, then that's a guy that you can have in your bullpen for quite some time. But if it doesn't work out, then it's an easy, see you later, easy DFA, easy release, however the case may be. This is a really nice piece to have compete in spring training for a bullpen spot. And when we're talking about the bullpen, we have open spots for the Braves this year. Joe Jimenez being injured, that's one spot. There's a lot of different pieces that need to be filled. I'm not saying Paredes is coming in and he's going to be your setup guy. He's not going to be Joe Jimenez. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that they do need to find some fresh arms, and having a good competition in spring training where you need so many pitchers. And if that doesn't work out, if he gets released, he clears waivers, maybe you can sneak him into the minors. Maybe that's a possibility. But if not, at least you had a decent competition for it. But I do like the idea of giving him a shot. Even his entire MLB career, he is about 1-for-1 strikeouts for innings pitched. It didn't work out as of recently, but overall, 54 innings pitched, 53 strikeouts. But those minor league numbers are absolutely insane, Lindsay. So many strikeouts, and that's exactly what you're looking for with a guy like that, because you're not going to get length out of him, but you can get one solid inning with good location, good ground balls. He could be a guy that you bring in to get out of a double play situation. You got to like stuff like that.
Yeah. Aaron Bummer's been a ground ball machine. Here's another ground ball machine. And again, if this all sticks. And when you go back and you look at what the Braves have added this offseason, because they've added 4 players, right? They've added Paredes, they've added Allen, they added Griffin Canning, who's a starter, and they've added Royber Salinas, who is a starter or a reliever. It's obvious the Braves believe that they know how to fix some of these guys, right? This is not just, we'll throw them in there and see what happens. This, to me, says we have an idea of how these guys can be better than they've been. There's a lot of guys you could have asked for from the Angels. The fact that they got Griffin Canning tells me there was a reason they wanted Griffin Canning. So I feel good about these additions and what they could do. And I do think you're going to see, of the 4, I'm going to say 3 of them play some sort of role, maybe small, but some sort of role for the Braves in 2025. Marcell Ozuna's birthday is today. And as a birthday gift, he got some interesting news. We'll break that down next. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Encase Cards. We mentioned them at the top of the show. It's a custom card manufacturer. They take your source photos of your youth sports participants, your musicians, whatever it might be, and they personalize it for whatever it is. For me, it's youth sports. My daughter plays soccer. My son plays t-ball. My son wants to try soccer next year, so I'm a little heartbroken over that. But their artists personalize it, their position, their team name, their stats, all that stuff. They print it on high-quality cardstock, slab it, and ship it to you as a keepsake. So go check them out, ncasecards.com. That's ncasecards.com. Welcome back to Braves Today. Lindsay Crosby, Christian Rauh. And we're we just talked about Enoli, Paredes and Nick Allen, but I want to talk about some of the news that came out on Monday. We saw some of the final notifications or final acknowledgments of position award finalists and things like that. So Chris Sale is officially one of the 3 National League nominees for Cy Young. Marcell Ozuna is not a nominee for MVP, but he is for Silver Slugger. So let's break down Chris Sale first. Obviously, we know he won the Triple Crown last year, 18-3, 2.38 ERA, 225 strikeouts, right? Led the National League in all those categories, led baseball in both wins and ERA among qualified pitchers. And he is going up against Zach Wheeler of the Phillies and Paul Skeens of the Pirates for National League Cy Young. We've been pretty confident that Chris Sale was going to win the Cy Young. Is there any concern that everybody's love affair with Paul Skeens means that he's going to get votes and potentially could pass Chris Sale for the Cy Young?
I think there's room for some concern. I don't think that there should be, but I think there is some room for concern that Skeens made the finalist list. I think that for the longest time, we thought it was just going to be Sale versus Wheeler as who's going to win the Cy Young. I think we're going to wind up having Wheeler finish 3rd place. I think Skeens is going to slide up to 2nd, and he will potentially steal some 1st place votes away from Chris Sale. I think when it's all said and done, Sale will still win the Cy Young. But regardless of the innings limit from Paul Skeens, he did finish with a 2.12 ERA plus. He did have some really good numbers. He was the starter in the All-Star game for the National League. People love Paul Skeens. There's no doubt about that. And he's a good pitcher. Let's keep that in mind as well. But the season that Chris Sale had and the Triple Crown that he picked up, unlike hitters, Triple Crown for pitching is still important in my eyes. And if I had a vote, there's no doubt that I'm going for Chris Sale. Hopefully the Writers Association does the same thing as well. But I do think Chris Sale should still run away with this one. I think he should still win it. But I would not be surprised if some 1st place votes are headed in the Paul Skeens direction because of his season that he had. I'm going to go out on a limb and say he finishes 2nd, though, Lindsay.
Yeah. Skeens 11-3, 1.96 ERA, 23 starts, 133 innings. If you're wondering why I said Sale had the best ERA, it's because Skeens didn't have enough innings to qualify for the awards. It's 1 inning pitch per team game. This was the Ronaldo Lopez situation going throughout the season where he would, because he was on every 6th day, he would get behind and fall out of the ranking. And then when he'd start, he'd jump back into the ranking again. Same thing here. Skeens didn't come up until May. So he was available to make his starts. It wasn't an injury thing like it was for Ronaldo Lopez, but Skeens just didn't get as much time in the majors as Chris Sale did. I still, like you said, I still believe Sale's going to do it. I would not be shocked if Skeens came up to second place over Wheeler, which I think Philly fans should be mad about, but I'm never going to sit here and advocate for a Philly or Zach Wheeler for anything. It wasn't a bad season. 2.57 ERA is the best of his career. He pitched an even 200 innings, made 32 starts, went 16-7. But I just feel like Skeens is going to end up jumping him because everybody loves Paul Skeens.
When it's all said and done, I think Lopez will probably finish fourth too. When we see the full standings of it, I think we'll probably see Lopez as the fourth place voter or fourth place finisher.
Yeah. And then when you look at the award finalists, National League MVP, Marcell Ozuna, the birthday boy, was actually overlooked in this. Shohei Ohtani is who we expect to win this, right? He had one of the greatest offensive seasons we've ever seen. 54 home runs, 59 stolen bases. It was nuts. Led almost every stat, right? Ketel Marte of the Diamondbacks and Francisco Lindor of the Mets were finalists for MVP over Marcell Ozuna. This is something Marcell obviously played all 162 games. He didn't lead he ended up not leading the National League in any of the stats, despite being in the Triple Crown race surprisingly later in the year. Finished with 39 homers, 104 RBI. He had that power outage late in the years we talked about. Batted .302 with a .925 OPS. Defensible to not have him in the MVP finalists, given the fact that as a DH, he's not contributing at all defensively when both Marte and Lindor did. And he also didn't steal many bases like Ohtani did. He did steal one. The Speed Demon stole one. But he didn't steal a bunch of bases like Ohtani did. Is this defensible to not have him in the top three?
I think the DH narrative has to go away because Ohtani kind of took that away from it. And even though that Ohtani stole a lot of bases, all that good stuff, I think you have to get rid of that narrative, at least for this season in that case. But when you look at the other people that came up for the finalists, it's hard to keep Ozuna in that conversation, in my opinion, just because he slumped towards the second half. He started really strong, and if he would have continued that strength, I don't think we would even be having this conversation. I think he'd be a finalist, and I think we'd be talking about how close he finishes as runner-up, because I don't think anybody's chasing Ohtani, and I think that's fair to say. But I do think that I do think, again, just like Lopez, we're going to probably see him finish as fourth place in this final. But you could have seen him over Ketel Marte, and I think I would have been okay with that. But I think the second half portion, what he did at the end of the season, struggled a little bit, just like almost every other Braves batter, is the reason why he's not in this award.
Yeah, the final month of the year, the last 26 games across September and October, he batted .277, which was his lowest batting average of the season. And prior to that month, his lowest slugging had been an even 500 in the month of June. His slugging in that final month was .383. So his OPS dropped to .759. It was 120 points lower than his previous worst, which was June, where he had an .874, and every other month was a 9 or a 1 dot OPS. So that ill-timed slump at the end hurt him. If he has that slump in the first month and then turns around and is hot the rest of the year, I don't think it's as big of a storyline, but the recency bias obviously does hurt. Yeah. Lindor started off slow. Aaron Judge started off slow and had a crazy rest of the year. And that's ultimately what kept Ozuna from getting to the 40 home runs. Was he only hit 2 in the last month of the year. He's also a finalist along with Ohtani. They're the only 2 finalists for Silver Slugger in the National League. Obviously, there's no way he's going to win that either. I don't see him winning anything over Shohei Ohtani. So this is definitely something where he's going to come out of this with nothing except for an all-star selection for the season that he had, which is a little bit frustrating, I think, as a Braves fan.
Yeah, it's going to have all-star on his baseball reference, but it's also going to have MVP 4. Okay, so it's going to have that as well. So at least you're going to have a little fun hyperlinks on his season. But overall, I do agree. I think it is a little frustrating that the guy that carried you to the playoffs with the exception of the pitching staff, because the pitching staff did too. But the biggest hitter that, really carried your team all season long is only going to get just an all-star appearance and, a good job in the home run derby. That's really all about you're getting from Ozuna this season. That is frustrating, but overall, we all know how great of a season he had.
Yeah, just going to be not necessarily fair, but either way, we'll get all of those awards later in the week. So we'll find out officially who wins all of this stuff. But again, we expect Chris Sale to win the Cy Young. I do think he'll be MLB's comeback player of the year. They haven't announced that. Sporting News put theirs out, but I do think he'll be comeback player of the year as well. And then Ozuna, we don't expect him to beat these guys for Silver Slugger or anything like that, but we obviously do think he deserved it. This has been Braves Today for Tuesday, November 12th. If you're listening on audio, do us a favor, leave us a 5-star review with some nice little comments for us. We always enjoy reading those, and words of affirmation are always nice. If you're on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell. Also leave us a 5-star review with some nice comments. We'll read them on the show because, again, words of affirmation are great. And until next time, this has been Braves Today.